Vladimir Putin has been bombarding Ukraine with drones. Thousands of them, launched from inside Russia, devastate Ukraine's cities and infrastructure every month. Ukraine has had enough, and so have the US and Greece. Those two NATO nations are set to deliver Hawk missiles to Ukraine in a massive shock to Russia. A Cold War monster is being resurrected as Ukraine is getting to unleash what some saw as a junk weapon to take out Russia's Shahid drones. On July 24th, Euromaidan Press reported that the US State Department has approved the sale of 2 military assistance packages to Ukraine, totaling $322 million in value. We'll get to the second of these packages a little later in the video. The headline deal is $172 million, which will be dedicated to Hawk Phase 3 missile system support, based on a request made by the Ukrainian government for goods and services related to the Hawk missile systems already in the country. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency provides the details covering what Ukraine is about to receive. The government of Ukraine has requested to buy sustainment-related articles and services for the Hawk missile system, including 5-ton cargo trucks, Hawk system spare parts, refurbishment and system overhaul of Hawk air defense fire units, toolkits, test equipment, support equipment, technical documentation, training, U.S. government and contractor technical and field office support, U.S. government and contractor technical assistance, storage containers and equipment related to spare parts storage, MIM-23 Hawk missile spare parts and missile repair, and other related elements of logistics and program support, it's announced in its official July 23rd press release. Defense Express simplifies all of this, essentially pointing out the new deal involves maintenance and spare parts for Ukraine's existing Hawk systems, along with overall program support. It also notes that everything the US is selling is being drawn down from its retired reserves, therefore repair and restoration work will be needed. Still, this is a win-win deal for both Ukraine and the US. Ukraine gets key services that allow it to keep one of its most vital air defense weapons working. As for the US, it gets to make money offloading retired systems that it otherwise would have to spend money to store and eventually dispose of. The deal marks the first time since Putin launched his invasion that Ukraine has officially purchased surface-to-air or SAM missiles from the US. Everything else it had received up to this point had been donated, meaning this deal is a game-changer. Now Ukraine isn't just relying on donations, it's using its own money to purchase the weapons systems it needs to fend off Putin's invading forces. But where does Greece fit into all of this? Think of Greece as the main facilitator of the deal. Defense Express points out that Greece's Sealman Corporation has been named as the primary contractor for the deal, with the Hawk system's original manufacturer Raytheon named as a secondary manufacturer. This makes sense. Greece has operated Hawk systems for a long time. It already has a total of 42 of these air defense systems in the country, which it actively works to maintain. That means Greece has a pre-existing industrial base for the repair and maintenance of these missile systems. Ukraine is going to be taking advantage of that base. The deal alone represents a renewed sense of cooperation between the US and Ukraine following a tumultuous few months where that alliance was called into question. And there's an interesting statement made in the Defense Security Cooperation Agency's press release that shows us just how far this cooperation now stretches. Implementation of this proposed sale will require temporary duty travel of an estimated 5 US government and 15 contractor representatives to Ukraine, the press release claims. So the US isn't just facilitating the repair and maintenance of Hawk missile systems for Ukraine, it's sending contractors directly into the country to ensure the deal goes through. As for Greece, this isn't the first time that Sealman Group has been awarded a contract to work on Hawk missile systems. Defense Express says that the company received another contract in April 2024 that saw it commit to working on the repair of some of these systems for Ukraine. The contract amounted to $49.9 million and had a deadline of 2029 for its completion. We know that the new deal is worth more than 3 times that, but there's no announcement on when the revitalized Hawks that are part of that deal will make their way into Ukraine. There's still work to be done. Defense Express notes that the established foreign military sales procedure in the US requires a firm contract to be signed between the governments of the US and Ukraine. Once that contract is signed, the US will handle all of the contracts related to the manufacturers that will be working on the Hawk deal. More details will arise in the future, but for now, we can say one thing for certain. Ukraine's air defense is about to get a whole lot more powerful. To understand how, we need to dig deeper into the Hawk missile system and its capabilities. According to Army recognition, Hawk stands for Homing All the Way Killer. The missile is a low to medium altitude SAM system that was developed by Raytheon during the 1950s. The system entered service in the US military during the 1960s at the height of the Cold War and has undergone several phases since its initial development. The most recent of these is the Hawk Phase 3, upon which development started in 1983, leading to the first fielding of the system in 1989. These are the Hawk systems that the new deal will focus on repairing and maintaining. Hawk 3 brought with it some major upgrades over the older versions of the Hawk, including enhancements to both its computer hardware and software, along with the addition of single-scan target detection capabilities. That latter upgrade means the newer versions of the Hawk are capable of detecting their targets faster, which is key when dealing with the drone bombardments Ukraine has been facing in recent months. Army Recognition also provides more details about the missile system and its capabilities. It says that Hawk systems are typically fitted to wheeled trailers, which makes the system semi-mobile. This isn't quite enough to match the mobility of more modern air defense systems, such as the US-made Patriot. Still, it's enough for Ukraine to be able to transfer its Hawks to wherever they need to be before moving them to cover after use. However, the highlight is the Hawk missile itself. It's likely the MIM-23B that Ukraine primarily uses to defend its skies against Russia. Powered by a dual-thrust M112 motor, that missile has a 5-second boost phase, followed by a sustained phase of about 21 seconds. The missile itself has a cylindrical body that's thin enough to make it extremely aerodynamic, giving it a minimum engagement range of about 0.9 miles up to a maximum of approximately 21.74 miles. The MIM-23B is also loaded with a 165-pound warhead, which can vary between a high explosive or a fragmentation warhead, depending on what Ukraine needs. The missiles are fast too. Army Recognition says that a Hawk missile can travel at speeds of up to Mach 2.7, which is more than fast enough to take out any of Russia's far slower drones. That gives us clues about how Ukraine is using the Hawk system. Its range and missiles mean that the system isn't ideal for dealing with fast-moving targets at a distance, such as missiles and fighter jets. Though the missiles are potentially fast enough to hit such targets, they have to do so at such a low range that there's too much risk involved. When Ukraine has superior air defense systems for that particular job, but that won't matter to Ukraine. Its Hawks are ideal for countering the long-range Shahid drones Putin has been firing at Ukraine, as these drones are relatively slow-moving targets that can be tackled at fairly short ranges. Key to the Hawk system's operation is the Strike Group Scorpion Mine-Resistant Ambush Protected, or MRAP, vehicle. That vehicle allows Ukraine to transport its Hawk systems at speeds up to 68 miles per hour over a maximum range of 479 miles, making its Hawks hard to hit targets when they're on the move. The Scorpion MRAP is also great at dealing with tough terrain, as it can cross bodies of water with a maximum depth of 4.9 feet and climb terrain with a gradient of up to 60%. Hills and water aren't going to stop the Hawk in its tracks. Then there's the radar, or more accurately, radars. The Hawk Phase 3 systems that Ukraine will be able to repair and maintain thanks to this new deal come with a PAR Pulse Acquisition Radar, which is the system's primary means for detecting incoming aerial threats. That radar system is capable of operating in all types of weather and uses a digital moving target indication system to detect high-priority targets among aerial clutter. Again, that's ideal for defense against drone strikes. Ukraine can use this radar to separate the most threatening Russian drones from decoys and drones that aren't going to hit their targets, ensuring it can use its Hawk missiles to take out the drones that are about to do the most damage. Alongside this PAR radar is a continuous wave acquisition radar, which is mounted to a separate trailer and can provide data about a target's speed and raw range. The Hawk Phase 3 also has a high-power illuminating radar, which helps the system to automatically acquire and track designated targets. Plus, there's a range-only radar, which, as the name implies, can determine the range of a target. This final radar is usually called into use when the high-power illuminating radar is taken out of commission due to jamming signals. While all of this is impressive, we have to remember that the Hawk is a Cold War-era missile system. That's the entire point of the new deal Ukraine has struck with the US and Greece. These systems are aging out and require extensive maintenance and repair work to keep them running. It doesn't look like Ukraine will be getting new Hawks as part of the deal. But what it does receive is access to a weapons manufacturer that has the industrial setup needed to keep its existing Hawk systems operational. And that's not all. We mentioned earlier that there's a second part to the new deal the US has just announced with Ukraine. That second package ensures that Ukraine will be able to restore a vehicle that has proven vital to its fight against Russia, the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. Euromaidan Press says that the other $150 million of the $322 million deal the US has just approved will be dedicated to servicing these vehicles for Ukraine. That's massive. And to understand why, we turn to Kyiv-based security and foreign policy expert Jimmy Rushton. On July 24th, Rushton spoke to Times Radio to discuss the new deal between the US, Greece, and Ukraine. He explained precisely why the Bradley portion of the deal is so important to Ukraine. Bradley infantry fighting vehicles are incredibly effective, Rushton tells Times Radio. I've spoken to a bunch of guys that use them in the field and they absolutely love them. In fact, they view them as better than tanks. They're more versatile, they can carry people, and they have an incredibly effective autocannon which tears up enemy infantry. Rushton adds that any new delivery of Bradley vehicles to Ukraine would act as a force multiplier. It doesn't look like this deal will give Ukraine more Bradleys, but it will help Ukraine keep the 300 Bradley vehicles it already has in good working order, ensuring they can be used for future assaults against Russia's forces in occupied Ukraine. But let's come back to the Hawk deal. The key question to answer here is, why does this deal matter? After all, it doesn't appear that Ukraine is going to be getting a new Hawk air defense systems from either the US or Greece. Instead, it's getting a host of repair and maintenance services that will help it keep the unknown number of Hawks it's already operating in good working order, but that alone is vital, and the main reason why is simple. Ukraine needs all of the help it can get with its air defenses right now. Rushton makes that point in his Times radio interview, noting that the Hawk is very effective for a specific type of air defense. They're an older system, Rushton points out, but that doesn't really matter because the stuff they'll be shooting down, a lot of it's not particularly sophisticated either. The stuff Rushton is referring to is the Shahid drone Russia is firing into Ukraine in record numbers. And that's the main point. Throughout 2025, Putin has found himself increasingly relying on his hordes of Shahid drones to hurt Ukraine, as Russia's ground forces fail to make any advances Putin needs them to make. ABC News provides some numbers. It says that Russia has launched 4,929 drones at Ukraine between July 1st and July 21st, which averages out to about 234 drones per day. There were still 9 days left in the month when ABC published its report, meaning that Russia was on the verge of breaking the record of 5,438 drones launched in June. Assuming Russia maintains the same rate of fire, it will have fired a staggering 7,035 drones at Ukraine by the end of July. That sheer volume is a massive concern for Ukraine. Putin's goal is clearly to overwhelm Ukraine's air defenses with such sheer numbers that at least some of Russia's drones break through. The tactic seems to be working. The BBC says the United Nations Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine reports that June saw Ukraine suffer its highest number of civilian casualties in 3 years, with 232 people being killed and another 1,300 getting injured. Russia's intensifying drone and missile strikes are the reason behind this higher casualty rate. That's where the refurbishment of Hawk air defense systems comes into play. As Putin continues to intensify his drone strikes, Ukraine needs as many of these systems up and running as it can get. They're vital for taking out the drones. Now, thanks to the US and Greece, Ukraine won't have to worry about having gaps in its air defenses due to Hawk systems being out of commission. It'll be able to get them fixed, and that means the Hawks will keep firing. They'll need to be firing too, as it doesn't look like Russia's drone strikes are going to be slowing down anytime soon. On July 21st, Business Insider reported that Western analysts believe that Russia is building so many long-range Shahid drones that it will soon be capable of launching up to 2,000 of them in a single day. That's according to Germany's Major General Christian Freuding, who said in July that Putin is striving to further increase production capacity of its Shahid drones. They want to expand the drone attacks we just talked about, Freuding added. The ambition is to be able to deploy 2,000 drones simultaneously. We need to consider intelligence countermeasures, and Putin is willing to do anything he can to boost production numbers. On July 20th, The Telegraph reported that he's using a new army of teenage students in Russia's drone factories to build Shahids. It also points out that Russia's Shahid production rose by 16.9% in May alone, and it's likely only going to grow from here. Ukraine needs its Hawk air defense systems to counter the large hordes of drones that likely lie in its future. Its new deal with the US and Greece ensures Ukraine will keep as many of its existing Hawks operational as possible. But that's not the only reason why the new deal matters. We mentioned earlier that the deal showcased the increased cooperation between the US and Ukraine in recent weeks. That cooperation has been cast under doubt at several points since Donald Trump started his second term as US president. But now the relationship seems to be as solid as ever. It's also not just cooperation between Ukraine and the US that's important to the deal. By awarding a contract to a Greek company, the US is also showing that it's willing to work alongside NATO to ensure that Ukraine gets what it needs to defend itself against Russia. That shouldn't come as a surprise in the wake of the White House press conference held between Trump and NATO chief Mark Rutte in mid-July. During that conference, Trump announced a new deal that would see NATO's European members purchase weapons systems from the US that would then be sent to Ukraine. "We've made a deal today where we are going to be sending them weapons, and they're going to be paying for them," Trump said. "This is billions of dollars worth of military equipment, which is going to be purchased from the United States, going to NATO, and that's going to be quickly distributed to the battlefield." The new Hawk deal isn't part of that NATO arrangement, as Ukraine is paying for the Hawk and Bradley refurbishments itself, but that's not the point. What's important here is that we're seeing the US follow through on its claims that it's going to be working alongside both Ukraine and NATO to ensure Ukraine gets what it needs. It's the what it needs aspect to which we should pay attention. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency statement we mentioned at the start of the video even says that the Ukrainian government requested this deal. So what we're seeing here is perhaps a new form of cooperation. Ukraine informs the US of what it needs. The US does the legwork to fulfill that need. Finally, we have to consider Greece's role in all of this. It's fair to say that Greece isn't the most prominent member of Ukraine's allies in its war against Russia. It is definitely an ally. In October 2024, the Kyiv Independent reported that Greece and Ukraine had signed a bilateral security agreement, meaning Greece is firmly in Ukraine's corner. However, the nation hasn't stepped up as much as Ukraine might like when it comes to providing military aid. According to Statista, Greece had only donated around $170 million of military aid to Ukraine by the end of February 2025. That makes it one of the lowest individual donating countries, with only Slovenia, Turkey, New Zealand, Hungary, Iceland, and Taiwan ranking below it. Statista also points out that Greece's donations up until the end of February are only equivalent to 0.07% of its gross domestic product, or GDP. For comparison, Estonia has dedicated 2.34% of its GDP to Ukraine, with Denmark, Lithuania, Latvia, Finland, and Sweden all committing more than 1% of their GDP to Ukraine's cause. Greece has its reasons for such a low donation amount. It's part of the European Union, which is donating heavily to Ukraine, so it can claim some measure of cooperation there. Its economy is also still recovering from a devastating financial crisis several years ago. Still, some might argue that Greece could be doing more to help Ukraine. With this deal, it's found a way to do that without spending more of its own money. Greece making its Hawk maintenance facilities available to Ukraine, albeit at a price, means that Ukraine can feel more confident than ever in its alliance with yet another European nation that is wary of Putin's aggression. As for Putin, he'll be furious about the new deal because it's a direct counter to his drone bombardment strategy. And the refurbishment of Hawk systems isn't the only thing Ukraine is doing to bolster its air defenses. Ukraine has cracked the code and destroyed Russia's biggest war advantage with another air defense system that is shooting Putin's drones out of the skies. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more videos covering the latest developments in the Ukraine war. And thank you as always for watching.